Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Blue Moon Shawl, which is a free pattern you'll find on both yarnspirations.com and on mooglyblog.com as the Fall Crochet Along for 2021. To make this pattern, you'll need 2 Caron Big Donut Ogos. I used the Blue Moon colorway, which inspired the name. You'll also need a US K-hook, which is a 6.5 millimeter one. And of course, you'll need your usual crochet supplies, a yarn needle, stitch markers, and scissors. In this video, I will be demonstrating how to crochet section 5, which is the dark blue section you can see right here. So now we're ready to start section 5 with our new color, color E. For me, this is the darkest blue, but it can be whatever color you want it to be. And we're going to join to the first stitch of the previous row. Remember, at the end of row 35, we do not turn, so we join to the first stitch we made in row 35 to begin row 36. So that is our marked chain right there. And we want to go ahead and join with a slip stitch and then chain 1. So I will insert my hook right in that marked stitch and then get that stitch marker on out of the way here. Get a hold of my yarn, make my tight little slip stitch on there, and chain 1. Then we're going to begin row 36 with 2 single crochets in the very first stitch. So we put 1 right there. Go ahead and mark the top of that stitch. And follow it with a single crochet in the next stitch, in the same stitch rather. And then to continue across, we work 3 single crochets in each chain space and a single crochet in each double crochet. 3 single crochets in each chain space, a single crochet in each double crochet, much like we've been doing for that first row throughout. And we'll continue that all the way until we get down to the marked chain space in the center. So I'll see you when we get to the middle of row 36. So as you can see, we've worked 3 single crochets in each chain space and a single crochet in each stitch, and we've worked our way down to that marked chain space there in the middle. So here we're going to work 2 single crochets, chain 2, place marker, 2 single crochets. So there's 2 single crochets, we'll chain 2, and then go ahead and move that stitch marker right on up around that chain 2. And then we can work 2 more single crochets in that same chain space. After that, it's the same thing we've been doing until we get to the end, where we would work 2 single crochets in the very last stitch. So I'll see you when we get to the end of row 36. So here we are at the end of row 36. I've worked those single crochets all the way to the last stitch, where I worked 2 single crochets in the very last stitch. And at the end of row 36, you should have a total of 198 single crochets. So now it's time to turn and make row 37. To begin row 37, we chain 1 and single crochet in the first stitch. That will be our new first stitch for this row, so we'll get our stitch marker right in there. There we are. Then we are going to chain 5, skip 3 single crochets, and single crochet in the single crochet after that. So let's do that together. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we skip 3 single crochets. So let's find those there. 1, 2, 3, and single crochet in the stitch after that. Then we chain 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and skip 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the next stitch there. This begins the section that starts with the asterisk if you're following along with the written instructions. Single crochet in the next single crochet, which is the one we'd marked with our fingers there. Then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then skip 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And and then of course begin the repeat again. Single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 5, skip 4. So single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and skip 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll continue this until we get all the way to that marked stitch or chain space rather in the center. So now we've worked our repeat all the way to that marked chain space there in the center. We chain 5, skip 4, single crochet in the next, chain 5, skip 4. So we end our repeat with that chain 5 right there, skip those 4, and that lands us right in that chain space. So inside that marked chain space, we're going to work a single crochet, chain 3, place marker, single crochet. So single crochet in that space, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, place marker, move that stitch marker right up around the chain 3, and single crochet back in that same chain space. After that, we continue with our repeat again. Chain 5, skip 4, single crochet in the next. Let me double check my counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, single crochet in the next. And we're going to repeat that until just 4 single crochets remain. So I'll see you when we get to those last 4 single crochets in row 37. Okay, so we've continued making those chain 5 loops all the way until there are just 4 single crochets left here at the end for row 37. So what we're going to do next is chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we skip the next 3 and single crochet in the last stitch, just to mimic what we did there at the beginning of the row as well. And with that, we're finished with row 37, and you should have a total of 42 single crochets. All right, so now we're ready for row 38. I'm going to begin with a chain of 3, which will count as my first double crochet, so I want to make sure to put my stitch marker in the top of that 3rd chain. Then we begin the section that starts with the asterisk, so this begins our repeat. We work 5 double crochets in the 3rd chain of the next chain 5. So we look at it here. Let's look at those. We've got 5 chains there, so we've got 1, 2, 3. So right in that 3rd chain, we want to work 5 double crochets. So we'll yarn over and work into the chain. This is specifically into the 3rd chain, not into the chain space. This creates a different look. It makes all the bottoms of these stitches go into one particular point rather than spreading out across that chain space. So it's just another way to work this sort of pattern here. We get a slightly different look for this row. So there we have our 5 double crochets worked into that 3rd chain. And then the next thing we do before we begin the repeat again is skip the next single crochet. Then same thing, 5 double crochets in that 3rd chain. And that's what we're going to do all the way until we get to that marked chain 3 space. Just work 5 double crochets in the center or the 3rd of each of those 5 chains in those 5 chain spaces. And I'll see you when we get to the center of row 38. Okay, so as you can see, I've worked 5 double crochets in the center of each of those chains in the 3rd of the 5 chains. And now we are at our marked chain space. So in that marked chain space, we're going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, place marker, 3 double crochets. So here's our 2nd. And then a 3rd. I'm going right into that chain space there every time. And then chain 1, and we're going to move that stitch marker up to that chain 1 space. So we go right all the way around it there. And then 3 more double crochets right back in that same chain space. And then of course, after that, we go back to skipping over those single crochets and working 5 double crochets in the 3rd chain of each chain 5. So we'll continue that on across, and I will see you when we get to the end of row 38. So here we are at the end of row 38, and you can see I've continued across with those 5 double crochets in the center of each chain. So when we get to the end with that last single crochet there, we just want to put 1 double crochet there in the last stitch to finish it off and mirror what we did on the other end. So at the end of row 38, you should have a total of 208 double crochets. And now it's time for row 39. We've turned and we begin with a chain 1 and 2 single crochets in the very first stitch. So I'll put my stitch marker in the first one and then go back in for our 2nd single crochet. After that, we're going to work a single crochet between the previous and the next stitch. So if we look at what we've done here, previous stitch is the stitch we've worked into, and this would be the next stitch. Normally, if we'd go to the next stitch, we'd crochet in the top, But right now we're going to single crochet between that first double crochet of the previous row and that 5 double crochet shell right there, right in that space right there. Then we're going to chain 5, skip 5 double crochets, and single crochet between the previous and next double crochet 20 times. So let's do the first couple of those together here. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we skip 5 double crochets and single crochet between the previous and next double crochet. So very simply, single crochet between those groups of 5 there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet between the shells. So you'll continue that 20 times so that you have a total of 20 chain 5 loops, and that will bring us close to the center of row 39. So you can see here, I've worked those chain 5 loops with a single crochet in between those 5 double crochets all the way, and that brings us right to our marked stitch here where we had double crochet 3, chain 1, double crochet 3. So what we're going to do now is we're going to chain 4. Whoop, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to skip those 3 double crochets, and then right in that marked chain space, we're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, place marker, single crochet. So I've got my single crochet, chain 2. We'll move that stitch marker right on up around the chain 2. And then we can single crochet right in that same space. So to mirror that on the other side, we need to chain 4, 2, 3, 4. Skip the second half there of our center, those 3, single crochet in between those sets there, and then we can continue right on down the side. Chain 5 and single crochet between the next 2 sets of shells there. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Jump on over here, and I'll see you as we get close to the end of row 39. So I'm just about at the end of row 39. I've got those chain 5 and single crochet loops again, and I finished by working my chain 5 and that last single crochet right in between that set of 5 double crochets and the very last single crochet, which I've marked with my stitch marker there. So since this is our last stitch, we want to go ahead and put 2 single crochets right in the top of that marked chain. So that way it will mimic what we did at the beginning of our row. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and move that stitch marker on out of my way as I finish this up. And at the end of row 39, after you get these last 2 single crochets in here, you should have a total of 48 single crochets made. So now we can turn and work row 40, which is our last row for section 5. We're going to begin with a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3. We know that will be the top of our double crochet, so I'll put my stitch marker right in there. There we go. And then 4, 5, and 6, and that will count as our chain 3 space. So what we're going to do next is work a double crochet in the first stitch, so right back in that very first stitch there. There we go. And then we are going to skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and in the in the third chain of the chain 5, we're going to work a double crochet, chain 3, double crochet. So skip over that stitch, just come right over here to that chain 5. Remember how we were working to that center of the chain before? We want to do the same thing. Find the third chain right there in the middle and go right in that third chain. But now instead of working 5 double crochets, we're just working 1 double crochet, chain 3, and then another double crochet back in that same chain. And then, just as before, we skip the next single crochet and do it again. So just work one of those wide V stitches from before, a double crochet, chain 3, double crochet in the third of that chain 5, right about till we get to the center. So I'll see you as we come to the center of row 40. Okay, so as you can see, I've continued making those double crochet, chain 3 double crochets until we get to that chain 4 space right before our marked center right there. So when we get to that chain 4, we're going to work our double crochet, chain 3 double crochet in the third chain of that chain 4 space. So since we have 1 fewer chains here, we have to handle it just a little differently, but otherwise it's the same thing. Double crochet, chain 3, and double crochet in that third of the 4 chains. Then skip the next single crochet and work a double crochet, chain 3, place marker, double crochet in the marked chain space. So go right in that marked chain space for our double crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We'll move our stitch marker on up here to our new center chain space. And then, of course, double crochet right back in that same space. Then, so that we mirror what we do on the other side, we need to work our double crochet, chain 3, double crochet in the second of the chain 4 on this side. So we'll get those in there. Chain 3 and our next double crochet. And then we can go back to what we were doing before. Double crochet, chain 3, double crochet in the third of each chain space until we get to the end of row 40, and I'll meet you there. So here we are at the end of the 40th row, and I've got just 3 single crochets remaining. So what I want to do now is skip those first two single crochets and just work a double crochet, chain 3, double crochet in the very last stitch. So there's my double crochet, chain 3, double crochet. So at the end of this row, we're going to go ahead and break our yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and move this stitch marker up to the last stitch here. And then we can finish off with color E. We'll begin our next row with color A again, or at least that's how I did it. Of course, you can have your own color scheme. So when you do that, I do recommend that if you're using the Ogos, that you go ahead and break into your second skein. Keep any leftovers from the first skein to work the edging, but start each new section as we continue with a new section from your new Ogo. We're also not going to turn at the end of this row, but we'll be joining back to the first stitch of this row as we begin section 6. And that's how to crochet that section of the Blue Moon Shawl. Stay tuned for the rest of the videos and the rest of this beautiful shawl pattern featuring Caron Big Donut Ogo. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.